What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Philosophical Misfit podcast. Today, what I'm going to be talking to you about is something that people have actually been asking for my opinion on for quite some time, actually. Normally, every Friday night on my YouTube channel, I have these live sessions, Q&A, AMA, sometimes we'll have topics to talk about, whatever. But a question I get a lot is, what do you think about the simulation theory? Basically what, like the Matrix kind of thing. If you've ever seen the Matrix movies, fantastic trilogy, by the way. But classic trilogy too. But basically that's what, the simulation theory is to, some of you, who might not know. So, basically that this reality is not real, that there is another reality, and that this is all just a simulation, that this is all fake, and, we're in some sort of video game, that sort of thing. And I've never had an opinion on it. I've never had an answer. I'm just like, that's a cool thought. That's an interesting thought. That's a cool thought. But I never had like a solid thought, a solid opinion, a solid something to say, this is what I really feel about this. This is what I really think about it. Until what happened to me just, when was it? It was last week. So I'll tell you the whole story, but I felt like I experienced, possibly, I don't know, the simulation, that I was in a simulation. I know how it sounds. Trust me. And there's a lot of things I learned out of this experience, and my head is still spinning from it. Usually when something weird or crazy, whatever, like something like this happens to me, I write it down, just so I don't forget it. And it actually took me a couple days to write it down because I was just like, what do I even do with this? This is insane. This is absolutely insane. And it took a couple days for my head to get right again, which I'll explain that a little bit more as I keep going too. Learned a lot of things inside of this, and out of this, I guess this experience of the said simulation, I got a lot more understanding. I think more understanding than if I would have actually looked into it, that is, which, experience is the greatest teacher. So, all right, let me go ahead and stop wasting time and get on with this story. So, as a lot of you know, as many of you know, I meditate regularly. I meditate every single day. I have meditated every single day almost every single day. I'll say that, for the past, probably 6 to 8 months. And normally when I am meditating, for the longest time, it was just sitting in silence. And, I built up, I went from 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, and then 15 minutes. And I hit this point at 20 minutes that I was good with, I was okay with. I was like, 20 minutes is a good time to meditate. And then I found, and I would meditate sometimes multiple times a day. So I guess added up total, like sometimes an hour a day, 3 separate sessions of 20-minute meditations. So meditating, and I normally, like I said, would do this in silence, and then I started adding to it this thing called binaural beats, which is essentially, in case you don't know what this binaural beat is it's like what Robert Monroe, which I just did a book review, or book reviews, I should say, on my YouTube channel talking about Robert Monroe. But he is like this explorer of the out-of-body experiences. And he wrote 3 books on the subject, and I really wanted to dive in deep in that and know my thoughts on it. So I read all 3 of his books. But something that he talks about in his books in his books is called the Hemi-Sync Process. And this is very similar to the effect that binaural beats has. And I think it's actually pretty much the same exact effect. And what it is you have you have to do it with headphones on. And it's not an actual beat. It confuses me why people call them beats, because if it is a beat and there's music behind it, it kind of defeats the purpose of the whole thing. So let me explain. So you have to do it with headphones on. And in one ear, you have a certain sound frequency playing. And then in the other ear, you have a different sound frequency playing. Now, say in your right ear, the frequency is 100 hertz. And then in your left ear, the frequency is 105 hertz. So you're going to hear this kind of really slow whoa, 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 kind of thing going on. And what that does is your brain will then get synced to a frequency of 5 hertz. So obviously 5 hertz is the difference between 100 hertz and 105 hertz. Now 5 hertz is actually a frequency that is like when you are in very deep sleep, your mind is resonating at a frequency of 5 hertz. When you're super awake, it's like somewhere between like 35 and 40 hertz. This deep meditation, some out of body experiences, all of that is like an 8 hertz. And so you can listen to these binaural beats, and they're kind of like a natural cheat code into getting your mind into a state of consciousness that sometimes takes a lot of work to get to. So at first I wasn't messing with it at all. But when I tried it actually for the first time, I noticed the effect that it had when I actually took vacation in California. And then, when I was in California, I had the worst flight situation ever. It was absolutely terrible. Made me hate flying, and especially United Airlines even more. It was just horrible. So I missed my flight, had to spend the night in San Francisco, then wake up the next day, go to LAX, and then fly to Monterey. A huge long story. But when I stayed the night in San Francisco, I was wired. I was heated, and it was like 1 or 2 a.m. and I was just so upset and so awake by me missing my flight and all of this other stuff that was going on, a whole bunch of other stuff that I missed out on, and it was just chaos. And so I wasn't able to go to sleep, but I had to be up at 6 a.m. to catch my flight. And I normally take melatonin to help me go to sleep. But I didn't have the melatonin with me. It was in my suitcase, which was at the airport, which was going to be on the flight the next morning. But what I did have with me was my phone and binaural beats. And so I was like, all right, let's put this to the test. Let me see if this actually works. So I put my headphones in, and I have this app that I can't even think of the name of it. What is it? I'm looking at it right now. It's Anada is what it's called. It's an app I bought for binaural beats, and there's this program on it called relaxation or deep sleep. So I played that program, and it had the same effect that melatonin did, if not even better. And, the thing is, I actually stayed awake for a bit, and I was like, okay, maybe I can go to sleep without melatonin. My body's not gonna, it'll settle down, it'll be fine. Well, my body was not settling down. So then I was like, all right, I'm gonna give this binaural beats thing a try. So I did that, and voila, I was asleep in like 5 to 10 minutes. So I was like, this has a serious effect on consciousness, on your brain. And so then I started using it in my meditation sessions. So I've been doing that for the last 2 months, have had some very awesome, very great meditation sessions, meaning just feel very much relaxed, very much at peace, very much centered. I can feel, something meditation does is it stimulates the vagus nerve in your body, which touches all your major organs, which, decreases inflammation. It just it's like this healing nerve, if you will, once stimulated. And it actually, one of the only times that the vagus nerve is stimulated is when we are in a deep state of relaxation or meditation. And so meditation can help have physical health benefits to where it can help you very much relax and decrease inflammation. And so it hasn't just been me wanting to practice expanding consciousness or awareness kind of thing, but it actually has provided significant physical help for me in my physical health journey with chronic Lyme disease and all this other stuff. It has helped so much. So all that being said, for the last 2 months, been doing these binaural beats with meditation, but I never really went past that 20-minute mark. 20 minutes was good for me. And there was actually one time that I think I went like 40 minutes, but it was by complete accident. I didn't have a timer going. My brain was kind of going everywhere. I wasn't like super focused on, being in the present moment and focusing on, all these other exercises that you can do in meditation. I wasn't really doing that. So 20 minutes has been like my cap kind of thing. So one night I decided I'm going to do 25 minutes. And have binaural beats going. So that's exactly what I did. And I had a incredible meditation. I was like, wow, I feel amazing. I feel rejuvenated. I feel, rested. I feel at peace. This is absolutely great. So I was like, all right, I guess that's, the new thing, 25 minutes and with binaural beats. Let's do this. Let's go. So the next night, which this just happened this past week, all that leading up to, what just happened this past week. And, by the way, I just finished reading these 3 books, that I mentioned with Robert Monroe. And his first book, his question was, maybe these out-of-body experiences and stuff, maybe this will prove definitively, even empirically with his research and, going into a lab and having tests done on him with out-of-body experiences, all this stuff, definitively or empirically prove that God exists. So that was his goal. At the end of his 3rd book, he came to the assumption that we are a part of a sort of simulation, because he claims to have gone so far out of his body into the depths of the universe or the far reaches of the universe, and he saw a emitter that was emitting our reality as we know it. And so this was just a hologram. It was a dream. And then out of that, he knew that there had to be somebody who created this, that there was a creator for all of this. So I had just finished, within not too long, within a month, within a few weeks, that 3rd book. So keep that in mind as well. So, okay, sit down, meditate, start meditating, do these, put in the binaural beats, and set the program for deep meditation and, for 25 minutes. So, few minutes into it, I'm feeling good. But I notice that the progression of, like, sometimes in meditation, you'll feel these sensations, or I know with me, my body, because when my body is relaxed, it heats up like crazy. And so I noticed that it wasn't my body heating up, because that'll happen a lot in meditation, which is completely normal. And I think it has something to do with the vagus nerve as well, and decreasing inflammation, all that stuff. But at the same time, even when I go to sleep, I'll wake up in the middle of the night, just like a hot box. I am, on fire. But this time in meditation, I was experiencing some different sensations, and I noticed it, I was like 5 minutes into it, and I was like, okay, what is this? So I was starting to feel like I thought I was going to have an out-of-body experience. I thought I was going to leave my body. It felt like my body was disappearing. Like I was forgetting about my body. And in that, I also started to feel vibrations all over my body, very, very intense, which Robert Monroe talks about in his books, that it's often these vibrations that it's like this happens right before you have an out-of-body experience. And so I was getting ready for it. I was like, all right, something is possible, something maybe is about to happen. Because before in meditations, when I've gone into a deep meditative state, I've had these flashes in front of my eyes. My eyes are closed, but I've had these flashes of things, of landscapes, of something in front of my eyes. No idea what it is. I have no idea if I'm falling asleep, I'm starting to have a dream, or if it's a vision. I don't know. It hasn't lasted long enough for me to be able to even explore it. But this time it was different. And before, when I have practiced things such as, trying to have an out-of-body experience in the middle of the night, which is like the best time to practice it, I'll have these vibrations, but they've gone away. I've never been able to achieve an out-of-body experience, and I haven't tried it months and months and months, but that's a different story. So now I'm having these vibrations, and I'm feeling like my body is disappearing, and I notice I'm starting to lose control. And as a lot of you know, I have trouble with panic and anxiety. And even 3 years ago, I had a nervous breakdown, a mental breakdown, which really started this whole journey for me, with the philosophical misfit and everything that I talk about on this channel. So I started to notice these sensations that I wasn't able to control. And this was maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes into it. In my breathing, I was starting to notice, all right, usually I can watch my breath, and right now I'm not actually able to. I can't seem to gain control over my breath, and I'm starting to feel a little lightheaded here. So I was starting to panic a bit. So I decided to open my eyes. Usually I'm like, nope, just go through it. Just let it happen. And you're fine. You're good. But I opened my eyes and to try to gain some sort of control back. But it didn't happen. When I opened my eyes, it felt like nothing was real, and that I was in some sort of simulation. And I was like, okay, this is fine. I'm just in the present moment. I'm just in this present moment. And so I'm super deep into meditation. Maybe it's the binaural beats. I don't know. So I'm opening my eyes and I'm just, focusing on this reality. But this feeling that I'm in some sort of simulation is not going away. So even though I set this timer for 25 minutes, I was 7 minutes in, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. It was that bad that I had to stop meditating, that I wasn't able to gain control. And so I took out the binaural beats, and I was like, okay, I just got to get up, brush this off, everything will be fine. So I get up, and it is not this feeling. These sensations are not going away. And everywhere I look, everything I touch, it was like, is this real? Am I in a simulation? Because it felt like I was real, but it felt like nothing around me was real. And so I was thinking to myself, what is going on? But then I just, okay, you know what? I'm just, okay, this will go away. I'm just gonna walk around, walk it off, listen to some music. I need to turn some music on, ground myself back in reality. Everything will be fine. It'll be good. So that's what I do. And I had already taken some melatonin at this point. And so I was winding down, getting ready to go to bed, because, I'll usually meditate before sleep just to help my body relax even more, just so I can have a good night's sleep. So then, I'm walking around, drinking lots of water, cause water really helps me when I'm panicking or having an anxiety attack or whatever. And so it just wasn't cooling down. It was at the same spot. And I was just thinking to myself, like, what is going on right now? Like, it was at the point where it was just starting to make me angry, because I was like, I can't get out of this present moment. I can't get in, but it wasn't a blissful thing. Like normally when I've felt in this present moment before, I've felt so in control and so alive, and I'm just like, this is amazing. Like this moment is absolutely incredible, and I'm alive and I'm grateful and, all this other hippy dippy stuff, basically. But this time it was like, wait, is this real? Which was terrifying to me. And so I was like, all right, I just need to, drink, I'm drinking lots of water, so I'm going to go to the bathroom. So when I go to the bathroom, I have a flashback of, it was a year and a half ago when I had my first panic attack. That was the worst panic attack and I thought I was going to die. And I went in the bathroom when that happened, and I looked at the toilet, getting ready to pee, go to the bathroom. And a year and a half ago that's when it all clicked, it all happened, and I passed out, blacked out, and I woke up gasping for air, thought I was going to die. I had a flashback to that, and I thought that same thing was going to happen. And I started to get really lightheaded. I started to grab onto the walls because I thought I was getting ready to pass out and go into a serious panic attack. Because I just felt like this, and the reason for all of this was because I couldn't shake this feeling that I am not a part of something that's real, that this reality is a simulation. And I was feeling that so much, it was terrifying. And so I'm like, all right, this is stupid. I literally said out loud, I was like, this is so dumb. Like, I'm going through these steps that I literally just did a podcast on of, first, accepting that this, or first, acknowledging it, facing it, accepting it. All right, I'm surrendering to it. And I'm like, I'm doing and I'm like, why isn't it going away? I'm doing all this stuff. So I'm like, all right, you know what? I just need to go to bed. I'm going to put some soft music on. And I'm just going to go to bed. And I wasn't able to turn the lights out. So I had music on, I had lights on. It was like pathetic. It was a low moment for me. And I'm just like, what is happening? What is going on? So laying in bed, and every time I close my eyes, I got those feelings of vibrations again. And I just wasn't able to control it at all. And I was thinking to myself, what is happening? And I finally just had enough. I started, the whole thing started. It was like, when was it? Maybe 9:30. I sat down to meditate. By the time I got in bed and tried to go to sleep, it was 11:45. So this has been going on for a couple hours now. And I finally had it. And I was like, yeah, this is dumb. I'm over this. So I was like, I'm not going to stress out about going to sleep because, you don't want to create this. I know this sounds weird, but this thought might help you if you struggle with sleeping and anxiety. It's you don't want to associate your bed. You don't want to associate sleep with a anxious or stressful activity. So it's actually better if you can't go to sleep to get up out of bed and to keep doing what you're doing until you feel tired. And so that's what I did. But when I got up, for some reason, I thought about Wim Hof. And if you don't know who Wim Hof is, he's known as the Iceman. And part of Wim Hof's story is he went through a whole bunch of things in his life that was really difficult, really hard, really just these bad, terrible things that he was going through that was happening to him. And he said in this interview that I watched with him is that he knew in order to get over this fear and this anxiety and, in order to get his body right again, he had to get uncomfortable. He had to get, in order to get out of the place that he was in, he had to get physically uncomfortable to be able to get outside of where he was at. For some reason, this popped in my mind, and in the November winter at midnight, when it was freezing temperatures and crazy winds that made it even colder, I was like, I need to go outside and I need to take a walk. I'm going to freeze my ass off, but I'm going to go outside and I need to take a walk. So I put on sweatpants, slippers, and 2 hoodies. That's it. And I, quietly make my way downstairs and I go outside and I start walking around, which, by the way, before that happened, before I went outside, when I got up, I didn't know what else to do. And I know this is some people could listen to this and be like, that's a pretty low move, but it's what I did. I was just so mad that I was like, you know what, God, if you know, all that I'm going through if this is the dark night of the soul, if this is, you know, if all of this is for a reason, for a purpose, and this is, you know, you're going to turn it all around, this is the time to show up right now. Because I kid you not, I started having another nervous breakdown. The same feelings I had 3 years ago were coming back, and I started having another nervous breakdown. And I was like, look, God, this is dumb. All right. If you're there, if you're listening to me, if this is some test, if this, this can end. Like, having the mental breakdown, it was not fun by any means. And what's happening right now, this is not fun. So if you're going to show up, like, now's the time. And so I just that even when I was like, 4 or 5 years ago, considered myself Christian and a, firm believer in God, I would still have conversations with God like that all the time. So it wasn't really anything different. That's my version of prayer, in that time. So what I did, and the only way I can explain why I did this next thing, what I did, before I went outside, was, if any of you have ever watched Game of Thrones, there's this, there's these characters. They're the warriors of light. I think that's what they're called, because there's the red woman, and then there's these other people. Well, basically, there's this guy that has died like 1 million times, but he keeps getting raised up from the dead. And he gets raised up from the dead because this other guy is praying for him, because he dies, he gets killed, and then this other guy, I think it was the Father of Lights, or the Light Father, something like that. It's been a while since I've watched that show, obviously, but the Father of Light. So this guy, the other guy, prays for the guy that's been killed multiple times, and then that's how he raises from the dead. And the guy that prays for him tells his story, and he said, I lost all belief in this stuff. I did not believe. I was completely against, the whole Father of Light kind of thing. And then in this time of need, I think it was the first time he saw his friend die. He said, I didn't believe in, basically saying, I didn't believe in God, or I didn't believe in this God. He said, I didn't believe, but I didn't know what else to do. I hadn't been taught. That's what I'm saying right now. But I didn't know what else to do. Praying for him was the only thing that I knew how to do. I didn't believe at all, but that's all I knew how to do. And so for me, now, I don't know how. I've learned more and more how to navigate panic and anxiety, and I was getting a grip on that in this whole situation. What I wasn't getting a grip on is the fact that I was slipping into another mental nervous breakdown, and I wasn't able to control it. I haven't had, obviously I don't want to have any more of these. Like, it's not fun at all. But I didn't know how to handle it. I don't know how to handle losing your mind and literally losing your grip on reality and thinking that you're in this simulation. I have no idea how to deal with that. So what I did was I grabbed my phone, grabbed my headphones, and I started listening to worship music. And because I didn't, my whole life growing up, if I had a nightmare, if I was scared, it wasn't, you're fine, it's not real, it was just a dream. It was, you're being attacked, pray through it kind of thing. So it's not because I believe it, but I didn't know what else to do. And so and at this point I was just desperate. I was like, I feel like I am slowly and gradually, continually losing my mind right now. So I grab my headphones and I start listening to worship music. I go outside And I just start walking around the cul-de-sac that's outside my house. I'm literally walking in circles in the middle of the night in the freezing cold, yelling at God like, dude, if you're real, this is the time to show up. And there was a lot, and it felt like I was out there for hours. And it was, it was so cold, but I was actually only out there for 20 minutes. But it felt like hours. And there was so many things that I realized when I was walking around out there. And it was just like, I was just questioning everything. And I guess I just I'm like, if this is the truth that we are in a simulation, like, and this all is a simulation, if that is the truth, how, if anybody were to realize that, would you be able to live this life with any sense of purpose at all? Like, if this is all, if this is a hologram, if this is essentially fake, why are we here? Like, what is the purpose of this simulation? And it was like I was finding out that I was just trapped, because I'm like, if that is the truth, then, I'm like preaching on my YouTube channel, like, it's better to live by truth instead of live by a lie. But what if that truth is causing you to lose your mind? I'm like, then it would be better for me to live by a lie, and I might as well just go back to, fakely believing in God. And I'm like, but I'm not doing that because I know I don't believe it and this isn't truth. But what else do I do if it is true that this is a simulation and this all doesn't, like, how can I cope with the fact that my reality isn't a reality at all, that it's just a hologram? And I started to just, think about all these things and realize, I'm trapped in all this stuff. And it was so insane to me that years and years prior to this, I would go on walks outside, most nights, and enjoy the outdoors. And I would imagine that I was like walking with angels, and that angels were with me, and that they were trying to communicate to me, or, they were my guardian angels and I was paying attention to them. And now I'm like, I'm outside walking, slipping into like this mental nervous breakdown. And I'm like, is it, is any of that real? Are there angels actually here? Because if there is, and if they're guardian angels and they're supposed to help me, now's the time to show up. So, there was a lot that I thought about in those 20 minutes. But I came to some conclusions while I was out there. And, I kept thinking about this simulation thing. And this is when I realized, this is when it like hit me, because this whole simulation thing became so real to me. And I realized that this is a conclusion that I have now. And I firmly believe this, that believing or thinking that this reality is fake has some serious psychological effects, not good ones. And believing that this reality is just a hologram, and that it's fake, and that there's a higher reality, like, that is not a good way to go about living life or thinking about your life. And then I realized, I'm like, if this is, and I actually thought to a movie called Birdman, which is one of my favorite movies ever. It's just absolutely incredible. Some people hate it because they're like, it's too weird. I absolutely love it. But that movie is all about acting, and I love it because I'm an actor. Or an aspiring actor, I should say. But in that movie, there's a part where Edward Norton is he's on stage and he's acting, and he starts picking up these apples, he's supposed to be drinking alcohol, but it wasn't real alcohol, it was just water. And it was supposed to be gin, but it was just water, and he picked up an apple and it was fake, and he was just throwing, and he's like, none of this is real. Why are we doing this? The audience was getting upset and all this stuff. But I thought that like this reality is real, because science has, we can measure matter. This is, it's solid matter that is around me. Like, this is real. And so if we are in some sort of simulation or hologram, it is a hologram of something that is real. And I think if it's not fake, it's not this simulation where, there's a higher reality and this isn't even reality. The other is more real. I think the simulation theory, if you think of it in terms of like none of this is real, that is the worst way to go about thinking about simulation theory. If you think about simulation theory as this reality is reality and it's a base reality, and any other realities outside of this or greater than this that are possibly there is a greater reality, or maybe even just a better way to say it is a different reality. Because just thinking that this is all fake or this is all a simulation that, I don't know if I really have to explain it, honestly. I guess knowing now from this experience that thinking of a simulation, that we are in a simulation and that none of this is real, I just can't see how anybody could be able to cope, knowing that there could be a greater quote unquote reality. I want what's real. And so if there's a greater reality, then that's what I want to be a part of. So if that were the case, why would I want to be in a lesser reality? I obviously want to live in reality and I want to live in truth because I care about truth. And I think it is better to live by truth. Obviously, the truth will set you free. But that truth can't be that this is all just fake, that this is all a simulation. I mean, when I was feeling that reality firsthand that night, like it wasn't just like a philosophical thought. Like I was feeling the serious psychological effects of it. It is not a healthy way to go about trying to figure out the universe by saying the simulation is real and we're just in this hologram and it's fake reality. No, I think, how could anybody cope with that? How could anybody, anybody who seriously cares about truth be able to live in this reality, or this whatever, knowing that there's something greater? Like everybody would always just, there would be no purpose here. And of course, it depends on how you look at it, because there could be a purpose here if this is a simulation where it's like a school where we have to learn these lessons and these gifts in life. There's many ways of thinking about it. I guess right now I'm just talking firsthand, and me thinking of the simulation like this reality was like a less like a fake, really. It's just not a good way of going about that at all. And maybe that's just a me thing. Maybe nobody else thinks about it like that. But if they do, it has some serious consequences. So anyway, the second conclusion that I came to when I was out walking was what was happening to me. And this is the most important thing. This is the hope in this podcast. Out of everything that I've been saying, this is the hope. Out of everything that I had been experiencing that night, what was happening to me was a good thing. And it's a good thing because I've talked about this in meditation before. People always talk about the dark sides of meditation. There's even a couple Christians who have spoken out against meditation and saying that it's demonic and it's evil because of the things that come up in meditation. And their fears, and they can lead to mental breakdowns, and they can lead to panic and anxiety. Pretty much everything that I experienced that night, and a couple days afterwards. It took a couple days for this to wear off. But it was a good thing that was happening to me, and it's a good thing when those things come up, because they are fears and they are things that you haven't dealt with. They are still there. And the fact that all of this happened to me made me realize that the mental breakdown, whatever you want to call it, that happened to me 3 years prior, there are still parts of me that is still dealing with that. There are still parts of me that are stuck in that point, that period, because I haven't been able to face those fears. And so I looked at it and I was like, I'm glad, honestly, I was feeling this panic, feeling all this, and I'm just like, I'm glad that this is happening, because this means that there is still things that I need to conquer. There are still areas of growth. I can still become more brave and more courageous. And I realized through this that what I was afraid of, and this leads to my third conclusion that I had, is that I'm still afraid. I'm scared. And it's not a bad thing. But the reason that the things that I'm scared of, and Robert Monroe talked about it time and time in his book, but it's going into the unknown. It's going into that nothing. Because you come, and again, you're hearing this, and to you it might just seem like a philosophy or a theory in terms of how I'm explaining it. But no, it's a serious thing when you come face to face with it, is that you come face to face with the fear of death. Because what science calls, nothing, which Robert Monroe says, there is something in that nothing, which, some atheists that might hear that is like, what? But at the same time, atheists think that something came from nothing. So, yeah, it's just circular. So, funny bit there. But when you go into this unknown, into this place that's supposed to be beyond death, when you're going into essentially nothing, or things that science has yet to discover that there is a beyond. Normally, people only experience that beyond with death. And, that goes for out-of-body experiences. That goes for all these, these deeply spiritual things, having this realization of another reality. You come face to face with death. And it's that fear that you got to conquer. And I know how that sounds. But to me, who's desperately wanting to know the truth and wanting to know what's out there, wanting to know if there is some sort of greater reality on top of our base for reality, you got to surrender to that. You got to surrender to that fear and just say, all right, this is going to happen. This is what it is. And, I realized that I think I had this realization that night as well. This isn't, I had those three conclusions, but I think I came to this realization as well that, dang it. I literally just lost my train of thought. So, dang, I was on a roll there. Totally lost my train of thought. Normally I edit this part out of the podcast, but I'm going to totally leave it in there. Here's what I was saying, is that surrendering, right? Surrendering to your fears. Here's what I realized. I'm pretty sure I realized it that night, is that after you acknowledge, face, accept, and surrender, after you surrender to it, then you're able to feel it out. Then it actually creates room for curiosity to be sparked, for a sense of adventure and exploration and even joy in that. Because I love adventure. I love going into the unknown. I love going on walk. Some of my favorite memories are when I lived in California and I would travel up north to Mount Shasta, which is a very hyper spiritual place, if you will. Which is what all of the locals said, and there's a whole bunch of crazy stories that happen on that mountain. But I would go up to Mount Shasta in the snow blizzards, and I would walk in places where nobody else has walked. I would go off the trail. I'd find these, weird little crazy places that I knew I'm like, nobody's been here before. And there was something about that it just felt right in my heart, in my soul, whatever you want to call it, that I was just like, this is me. This is what I'm supposed to do. Go into places that nobody's gone before. Walk these places that nobody's been. And I felt that in physical form. And for me, this is the mental, emotional, and spiritual form of that, is conquering these unknowns, going where nobody else has gone. And yes, there is a possibility that it's nothing is there. But again, why do I have that fear? And that just the reason that I'm saying that, like, because I have that fear, that's not me saying, oh, because I have that fear, it's actually real. It's me saying, fear is in most cases, and I should say in spiritual, emotional health, fear's never a good thing. Of course, there are times where it's appropriate for fear based on where you are physically in the situation at hand. But I'm talking about spiritually and emotionally. Fear is not a good thing. So I'm like, why do I have that fear? There's something in me where I can't stand it. The adventurer in me, the one that wants to go into the unknown, the one that wants to, has some crazy desire to be fearless. It's just like, I have to go into this. I have to know what's there. Not just for me and because for some reason I feel like my life depends on it. And I even told my mom one time, I was like, just to put it in her language, I was like, my salvation, if you will, depends on this. I'm like, I got to do it. I got to go there. But anyway, I realized that I still had fears. I'm not untouchable. I'm still afraid. And there was honestly a sense of gratitude in me for discovering that and for knowing that, because I was happy, honestly. And it started to ground me even more. That I was like, I'm glad that this is happening to me. I don't see this as like, oh, this is all evidence that, meditation is satanic or demonic or any of that. I was like, no, this is bringing up things in my life that I need to deal with, that I have to deal with, that in some weird part of me, I feel like it's a part of my purpose to deal with it. And I'm not talking about a bigger purpose, like I have a purpose, I need to do this for everybody else. I'm just talking about my purpose for who I am, because obviously I've said it so many times, I think in this podcast and on my channel, that your purpose isn't what you do, it's who you are. And to become who I'm meant to be, who I am, I gotta conquer these fears. I gotta go into these unknowns. I gotta conquer this panic, this anxiety, this fear of death. And the fact that I haven't, the fact that it goes deeper means I still have room to grow. And I think that's a very, very good thing. And so I was looking at this whole situation. Yes, it was I was slipping into a mental breakdown. I was questioning my own reality, even for days afterward. Last night I had to sleep with music. And I think it was 2 nights ago that I finally turned the lights off again to go to sleep. Just because I felt like if the lights were on, that it made reality more real. And if it was dark, then reality didn't exist. I don't know. It was weird. But, basically realizing, and I'm looking at my notes right here, or just the points that I was covering, the conclusions that I came to. Scared of the unknown, scared of death, scared of what would happen. Scared of what will happen, if there is a greater truth. And I think I already said that, but the consequences of knowing that truth, of knowing if there is a greater truth. And this gets into the weight, the weight of our words again, but the weight of knowing the truth, knowing if there is an afterlife, knowing if there is a heaven, knowing if God exists, could, however you want to put it, drastically make or break someone. And in that moment, it was breaking me. I mean, for better or worse, it will drastically change you. And that reality that night was made so clear to me that the reality, the knowing, it's not just I've said before, the big thing on the difference between faith and belief. But the more I think about, and I've said that belief I consider almost synonymous with knowing. But in this experience, I really think that there could be a difference between believing and knowing. I haven't dived into that super deep. I do think, even faith, belief, and knowing, maybe that's like a process. Maybe that's a journey of it. But obviously I don't think belief and knowing, I don't think they're the same thing. I think they are very closely connected, maybe possibly synonymous, but in that moment, I just felt, I was like, there has to be a distinction here, because really knowing, you could believe something based off of an experience that you can't necessarily explain, scientifically that is, or provide evidence, but you're like, this is absolutely real. Like I don't know what this is. And people have claimed to have that, which is why they also claim to believe in God. But actually being there, going there, being able to have the freedom to have curiosity in those areas and that sense of adventure, and just having the freedom to go in and out of those places, I think that would create something entirely different than faith and belief. It would be this deep knowing. And I think that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And, you know, I need to end this podcast with a bit more hope, because I feel like this is a pretty heavy podcast. And I've gone into, you know, I've been vulnerable and let you into, you know, my life and this personal story of, you know, getting this simulation, feeling this possible simulation theory that we have going on or whatever. But like I said, this, to end this on some hope, this is really what actually grounded me in reality. This revelation, this realization, whatever you want to call it, is, like I said, after this night, I went to sleep fine. This whole thing lasted a few days. And I still, even right now, kind of still feel it lingering, but it's gotten a lot better because of this one thing, this one movie that I watched. I'm telling you guys, movies changed my life. This is why I'm an actor. This is why I love storytelling. This is why I love content creating. Stories change lives. Movies change lives. And so my favorite holiday is Christmas. And it is that time of year. You know, I'm doing this podcast, and tomorrow is Thanksgiving. So I love winter. I love Christmas. This is my time of year. So I always try to figure out every year, I'm like, how do I get back to being a kid? Because that nostalgia that I feel around Christmas time, I'm just like, man, Christmas was magical as a kid. I never believed in Santa Claus. Like actually that he was a real dude who lived in the North Pole and there were elves. I never believed that. It was always the nativity scene and Jesus Christ, the birth of the Savior, with me and how I grew up. But Christmas was always and still is my favorite time of year. And every year I'm like, how do I get back to that magic as a kid? And it's funny that I always try to figure that out, but I also have this point, and it hits me most, ironically, the last 3 years since I've been in this place of skepticism, doubt, agnosticism, atheism, whatever you want to call it. This hasn't happened, but growing up, it was actually, even though this was my favorite time of year, usually hit like massive depression around this time. But that hasn't happened the past 3 years, which is totally dope. Really cool. But so this movie that I watched, I just decided, I'm like, you know what? I'm still going insane. I'm still feeling like I'm coming back from this little mild mental breakdown that I had the other night. So I need to keep it light. Normally I love like thrillers or a deep drama or something along those lines. But I was like, I got to keep it light. So on Netflix, there's this movie called Klaus, Claus, basically Santa Claus. But it was a different, and if you haven't seen this movie, go and watch it. It's spectacular. It's a different spin on the Santa Claus story. And I don't know what it was really about that film. I think there was one part in it where Klaus, or Claus, they say Klaus in the movie, but Santa Claus basically says, one selfless act always produces another. And there was some like intense, amazing joy that came from that came from these selfless acts. Oh, it's it's late. It's 9:15 and I'm still podcasting. I'm at the studio. I'm not even at home. My music studio. So my alarm just went off for me to take my sleep medication, but staying up late tonight because I ain't doing jack on Thanksgiving except watching the parade and watching the game. So, yeah. But in this movie, anyway, I'm talking about a selfless act, always producing another. And the joy that brought, that was what sparked it all. That was really what sparked all of this joy. And I found myself watching that movie, and I was just smiling the entire time. I was just like, joy. This is joy, happiness, joy. What, like, of course. What I don't know. It was something clicked in me that I'm just like, the path in life. And I thought about this after the movie. It just came to this, it just clicked in me. The path in life. I think I even wrote down what I was thinking. But the path in life that we are on, this path of not our purpose being, it's not, our purpose isn't what we do, but it's who we are. So this path that we're on of conquering our fears, of becoming brave and courageous and learning more how to love and learning more, how to love and be more us, be the person that it's like we were always meant to be, but all these fears were just tearing us down. And, conquering those fears and being made into the person that we want to be. It's like the road of that path to fulfilling your purpose of being you is this road of going into the unknown and conquering your fears. It's this unknown place where it's like you don't know what to do. And it's like the fear of the unknown is the biggest fear of all. Really, I mean, if you think about your fears, and even a fear of rejection, fear of falling. I mean, think about fears and think about the fact that let's just take those two for example. That the fear of rejection, you're afraid of rejection because you don't know what's going to happen. It's a fear of the unknown. And fear of falling, you don't know what's going to happen if you're going to hit the bottom, which is why you're afraid of falling, which means it's just a fear of the unknown. So all of your fears can boil down to it's this fear of the unknown. And so your life is walking this path into the unknown, conquering your fears, becoming the person that you were always made to be. But I realized that night after I watched that movie, watching that movie, experiencing joy, I was like, but if you just focus on that, if you just focus on diving into your fears, you're gonna lose it. You're gonna go insane. You're gonna become this stoic, stone cold warrior. And so to do that and to walk through life without joy or happiness, I mean, I just felt like in that moment it was the definition of insanity. Like that is what drives someone insane. Is going and trying to become this person you were always meant to be, walking down this path into the unknown, conquering your fears, but to do so without joy. I mean, why? That's like, the greatest, I don't know who said this, but the greatest failure in life is reaching a point of success. And then once you get to the top, you realize you're alone. And you're absent of joy. You're absent, you're just alone. And you made it to the top. You became who you wanted to be. But are you happy? Is there joy there? And so to walk through this without joy, it's just madness. It's insanity. And I realized in that night, I was like, it's almost like you got to walk down this path into the unknown, conquering your fears, becoming the person that you want to be. But you do it with joy. And it's that joy. Joy is what grounds you in reality. That joy, that happiness, that thing that gives you life, man. That thing that makes you feel like you. You gotta walk through all your fears and all of that with that joy. If you forget, once you forget that joy, once you forget what it feels like to live and what makes you alive, walking down that path can be more destructive than good. And I found that out firsthand through this entire experience. I'm just so I'm the type of person that's all in or all out. And I mean, in this journey and what I'm going through, I'm like all in. And I'm like, I'm going to conquer my fears. I'm going to do this. And, I'm going to, my dreams, they're not just some of my favorite lyrics, from one of my favorite bands in high school. And I still love them. I don't listen to them that much anymore, but Memphis Mayfire. It's called, the song's called Alive in the Lights. And the lyrics are, if you would know me, this isn't just a dream, but this is a path I've chosen that means everything to me. And every time I hear that song, every time I hear those lyrics, something in me comes alive where I'm just like, yes, this is not, content creating or wanting to conquer these fears, wanting to go into these unknowns and discover truth and reality. It's not just a dream to me. It's, becoming an actor, becoming a musician, making a living off of this stuff. This isn't just a dream to me, but this is a path that I've chosen that means everything to me. And that's the type of person I am. I'm just all in. But if I do all of this without joy, without people by my side, without experiencing and expressing life, then I'm going to keep on having nights like what I had last week. And I'm going to keep on having these mental breakdowns. I'm going to keep on having this fear and anxiety in me. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm so glad that these things popped up. And, I even thought to myself, I was like, what if all of that happened? Just crazy. What if that happened? Because the lesson that I needed to learn wasn't that I still had fear in my life that I had to conquer. But the lesson that I needed to learn was that I needed to conquer those fears with joy. I needed to bring joy back in my life. And I know that if I would not have had this experience with having this brief mental breakdown and panic, anxiety, and all of that in meditation, if all of these things would not have surfaced, then I would have never understood and realized this lesson of the needed joy that I need in my life. So it comes back to joy, experiencing life. And so it's just good. It's just good. I think about this and I'm like, it was just so crazy. It was insane. But I'm so happy. I am honestly overjoyed that all of it happened, that I did have a brief mental breakdown, that I went through all that panic and anxiety and realized all that. Because if all of that wouldn't have happened, then I would not have realized that I needed joy in my life. And that goes back to a principle. Like I've said before, there's these principles in the Bible that, whether you believe in God or not, these principles still, like, there is no fear in love. Principle that you can carry on through in life without, you don't got to believe in God or not. That principle is truth. Love your neighbor as yourself. And the fact that you got to love yourself before you love your neighbor. That's not that's a principle in life. That is truth. And I think this is one too, that it's in Psalm 100. I think it's Psalm 100 verse 1. Man, that's crazy. I literally haven't read the Bible in years, but I remember that. As it says that I'm not going to be able to quote it exactly, but I remember that the verse has something, as it says basically, that the gates of heaven are opened with thanksgiving, that giving thanks and rejoicing and gratitude, that is what opens the door to these new realities. That is what opens the door to heaven. That's what the Bible says. That having joy and gratitude and thankfulness is what opens the door to these places. So that's where I'm at right now. And honestly, ever since I've been giving thanks and been super grateful and had a lot of gratitude for everything that happened this past week and all that I've learned, I feel grounded in reality again. I don't feel like I said things are still kind of lingering, and yes, they are, but I feel like I'm getting more of a grip on reality and realizing it than I have maybe ever before. And while still conquering these things and going into the unknown and becoming the person I want to be. but I'm doing it with gratitude and joy. And that's the ticket. That's what's going to get me there, and that's what's going to get you there. So, guys, I hope you got something out of this podcast. This is the longest podcast that I have done. And I guess I had a lot to say, and I feel like I could go on and on about this, because this whole situation, it's just been like, the more I think about it, the more insight and revelation I feel like I get on my life. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. So, hit me up on Instagram, nate.alger. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. And guys, just remember, go out and do. And if you come across these things that I've been talking about, if you come across your fears, if you come across these barriers that, the barrier of fear, it's all there for a reason. And learn to be thankful for it. Learn to, find the joy in that. And above all, find your joy. Find what gives you life, and embrace it and travel with it on that journey into the unknown. So that's it, guys. I could keep going, but I'm going to wrap it up right here. So, yeah, that's it. I guess happy Thanksgiving. And if, that's here in America, or, I know Canada has a different Thanksgiving, but I don't know how much of the world has another Thanksgiving, or if it's just an American thing. I don't know. All right, guys. Well, happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever floats your boat. And I'll see you guys in the next one. All right. Peace.